Hi there, everyone, and welcome to the Homespun Wife. My name is Sherry, and I thank you so much for joining me for this video today. I'm going to be talking about the things that I have learned from a hurricane. I live in the foothills of North Carolina, and we are in one of the areas that is classified as having been severely affected by the hurricane. We have never experienced anything like the weather that we had here about a week ago. Unbelievable and so strong. And it did knock our power off, and we did have some damage in our community and our county. We've had no school for a week, lots and lots of trees down in the roadways, on top of houses, on top of cars, so, some flooding situations in the rivers and creeks around. Just lots of issues with our phones and not being able to communicate through our phones. But if you just go a few miles up the road from us, up to maybe 40 to 45 miles, maybe less from where we live, you're not going to believe the damage and the devastation that has happened in these areas of the mountains of North Carolina. Now, I know that North Carolina is not the only state that has been impacted. We have Eastern Tennessee, Georgia, also in Florida. I think I can't remember all the other areas, maybe going up the Parkway, you might have Virginia or West Virginia, all impacted by this terrible storm that passed through. But we have seen so many awful images coming to us from areas that are near and dear to our heart. My husband was born in Spruce Pine, which is right off the Blue Ridge Parkway in the mountains of North Carolina. And we both have lived at separate times in our young years in the Asheville area. And then we lived in Madison County, right up near the Tennessee line, for about 7 years when 3 of our children were born while we lived there. They were born in Asheville, but we lived in a town called Marshall, North Carolina. And it is one of the towns that you're seeing videos come through of how it has just been many areas of town just leveled. We are just heartbroken by what we're seeing. And we are praying for all of those who are going through this, because I can't imagine what it would be like to lose everything. I know that my husband and I, when we were first married, we lost everything in a fire. But, just to have the flooding and the, just the pure devastation and the horror of seeing walls of water coming at you so fast, you have no way to get away from them, like 30 feet of water just rushing in on you. I can't even, it's just hard for me to think about that without being terrified. And I know that people have not only lost homes, possessions, they can be replaced most often. But to lose like your pets, or to have your loved ones that are that have passed away or that are missing, and you don't know where they are, that is so difficult. And so our hearts are just going up to those folks who have experienced all of this, and we are praying for each one. There are some things, though, that I learned from this hurricane that I thought I would share with you. It might help you to get prepared for some type of power outage or weather-related event that you might have in the future. I have been a prepper, or what I would call a prepper, for a number of years. Some of my earliest videos, I showed you my stockpiles of food and different things that I was trying to store up to get prepared for any type of hard time that might hit. It might not be a weather-related event. It could be something like a job loss or civil unrest. We hear about that a lot, and we need to be prepared for those kind of situations as much as we can. This does not mean that we don't have hope in the Lord. It just means that we are using our God-given good sense to get ready for things that could happen. Now, we can't be prepared for every situation that might happen, but we can pray and ask the Lord to lead us so that we can be ready for as many things as possible. And I noticed that when this storm hit, there were 2 things that I really wished I had that I didn't have. A couple of years ago, my husband and I started talking about getting a generator. We talked about it just sort of loosely, because there's only really been a few times in our married life of 40 plus years that we have needed a generator. When we lived in those mountains of North Carolina, most often our power would go out during severe snowstorms. And in '93, we had that terrible blizzard that came through, and it snowed, several feet deep. And you couldn't even see your hand in front of your face if you stepped outside onto your porch It was the most severe snowstorm I've ever been a part of. And we lost power for over a week and had 4 small children and only one little kerosene stove to heat our whole house. And what we did in that case is we took everything that we had out of our refrigerator and freezer and we put it in the embankments of snow right outside our back door. And that allowed everything to stay frozen. And we used our gas grill and also the little top of our kerosene stove to like heat soup and things like that for our family to eat. But that was certainly a very difficult time, super cold in the house, and we learned a lot during that time. And then another time, not too many years ago, maybe like 21 years ago, my family was involved in an ice storm where we also lost power for about a week. And our street in the area was one of the last ones to receive power. And we were trapped in our home pretty much from all the fallen generators and limbs and power lines and things around our house. It wasn't really safe for us to go out. And so we just had to wait for help to come. That was hard. That was difficult. And so those situations over the expanse of a lifetime in our area are very rare, but things do happen. And so we started talking about the fact that, we're prepared in a lot of ways, but we don't have a generator. I had talked with my next door neighbor. She had lived for 10 years, I think it was about 10 years with her husband and children in Africa. And she talked about how they had acquired a generator then, a generator, and that they still had it and used it from time to time if they needed to. And I noticed that during the hurricane storm that we just had, she had that running and powering her appliances, and that's great. But we just kept waiting. We looked at the expense of them and we thought, this is going to be very expensive. We vacillated between a gas and solar generator. We couldn't decide which way to go. We ended up, I hear a chopper flying overhead. Can you hear that? It's vibrating the house. That's probably a Chinook or something going across, taking deliveries to those areas that are hard hit. But, we couldn't decide. As this year started, we were like, this is the year we're going to buy a generator. But there's so many things to consider. And one is the fact that solar is awesome. And when you can't get gas, it's great to have a solar generator. But they're very expensive. You can spend thousands of dollars on one of those. Do we do a whole house gas generator? Do we just stick with the old-fashioned, like a propane type generator? What do we do? And so we were having a struggle in coming up not only with the type of generator that we wanted, but the name brand, and then setting aside money to say, okay, we're going to spend, $3,000 or $2,000 or $4,000 on this generator that we might only use every now and then. It's so hard to let go of money in those situations. But it's during storms like the one that we recently had when we really missed it. Now, what we did is we did lose all of the food in our refrigerator except for some items. We had a cooler. We filled it with ice that I already had stored in our regular refrigerator freezer. We left our deep freeze closed and we were without power for a couple of days, but we piled ice on top of the food in there and it was almost completely full. And so it stayed cold. And I think most everything in my deep freezer is okay. But in our refrigerator, we put as many items as we could in a cooler. We ate off of those for a couple of days. And then after the storm ended, we just ended up throwing everything that had been left in there away. And so that is a loss of some good food. And it really made us decide that, hey, now is the time for us to jump in and get a generator. So I'm curious to ask you guys, do you have a generator and what type do you have and do you like it? Another thing that I really wish that I had was what I would call long-range walkie-talkies, because I was surprised that our cell phones had so much of a struggle getting signal. We could only get a small signal on the Wi-Fi on our phone. Well, we really didn't have Wi-Fi, but I guess it's like built into your phone. We could get internet connection some if we went into one area of our patio outside, but that was only after a day or two that we could get that. Even after our power was back on, we could not make and receive phone calls properly. And we could also not get text properly. And we were surprised. Like I couldn't talk to my parents. My husband couldn't talk to his parents. It was a struggle because we were wanting to check on them, and make sure that they were all right. Now, my parents live about 10 miles from me in one direction, and his parents live probably about 35 miles in another direction. And we were able to go and check on them and take some things to them after the first couple of days. We weren't sure what we would encounter in terms of, the roads being blocked off, but we were able to find our way around some of those blocked areas and get to them. And before long, most of the roadways, especially the larger roadways, were passable. Neither one of our parents had power. We got our power back on first, and we tried to talk them into coming here to the house and staying with us, but they wanted to stay at their homes. They felt comfortable there and felt like, well, the power will be back on shortly. And so we just had to accept that as an answer. But I really was wishing I had gone ahead and invested in some, long-range walkie-talkies. And I wish that my daughters had had one. They live here in town also. Each one of them in their homes, they could have had one. We could have had one, my parents and my husband's parents. If we could have all had one of these walkie-talkies, we could have had a way to communicate with one another at least and check on each other. And they are kind of pricey also. Anytime you're talking about really good quality, long distance, walkie-talkies, equipment like that, you're talking about money. And so, you can, for a 4-piece walkie-talkie set, you can spend $600 or $800. It's a lot of money. But I wished, like everything, at that moment when I couldn't get a hold of anyone, I couldn't hear anyone's voice. Sometimes the phone was not even ringing. They were trying to call us and we couldn't pick up. I just wish that we had had that other method for trying to communicate. So those 2 things that I wish that I had. But there were a few things that I did very well, and I was very thankful that we had thought ahead and made preparations. One is I had plenty of canned foods and shelf-stable foods, including shelf-stable milk. It really helped us that we had the little cooler where we could put the ice in, and then we had a little box of shelf-stable milk, and we were able to use that as like a coffee creamer, and just put that back in the cooler, and it worked very well for us. How do we have coffee? Well, we were able to boil water by using our camp stove. We have a camp stove that we bought years ago when our children were small, and we camped with friends. We'd go tent camping with them, and we bought a 2-burner, like Coleman type stove, and we have it to this day, and it's got a little bit of age on it. It works perfectly, works so well. It was a great investment all those years ago. And so it's something you might consider doing, is investing in either a 1-burner or 2-burner camp stove. And so we would take 1 burner and boil water, and the other we would make eggs and bacon. We would go out on our patio because the weather did clear up, and my husband was able to we were able to get a lot of debris off of our patio, and we could just stand out there in the fresh air because it was kind of stuffy inside without any air conditioner or anything running. And we were able to stand out there and prepare our foods. And we had we'd get the cast iron skillet out. We made fried potatoes with onions. My husband also cranked up our gas grill, and we did hot dogs and other foods, just cooking outside. And it almost felt like we were camping, and it was great. But for our coffee, I had just purchased some Folgers instant coffee in the bags. If you've never tried that coffee was really good. And it just comes in a little, sealed bag. Each little cup, a tea, or what I call coffee bag, is in there sealed up, and you just cut the top off and then take the little bag out, almost like a tea bag, and you would dunk that in that boiling water, and you dunk that in there for about a minute or 2, and then when you take it out and stir, your coffee is really, really good. And I had read a lot of recommendations about instant coffee online, and so that's how I ended up buying the Folgers coffee bags, and they were good. And so I'm so happy that they were, because I bought 3 boxes when I bought it. I got it on a really good sale online, and they are in my stockpile right now. So the little camping stove runs off of small propane canisters, and this is one of those little canisters. You just hook the nozzle right in here, and then you just take your lighter and you light your burner, cut the gas on and light it, and it will cook. And it smells so good cooking outside. And I have quite a few of these. I've purchased them like 6 at a time, and you can use it for several days. This little canister of propane will cook several meals, several days. And it will also run a Mr. Buddy heater. And I have a Mr. Buddy heater that I purchased for my stockpile. I haven't had to use it yet, but it will heat indoors using propane. It's one of those that's safe to use indoors for a number of hours using these little propane canisters. And so I like to keep several of these, not only for cooking outside, but in case we're ever in a winter storm, we would like to have a heater indoors. I had invested in the little Mr. Buddy heater. Have any of you ever used one of those, or do you have one that you've put back for times when you need heat indoors during some type of winter event? Now, that took care of like our food. Of course, we had water. I mentioned the water that we had in all these different sources. And we also had some other things that I will show you to help us at nighttime, because it is the fall time of the year and it gets dark so early. I have several of these candles that I've invested in, and maybe some of you have them too, where they just run on a battery and they would be on a timer. And so as soon as it got like dark in the evenings, they would cut on all through the house. And it allowed us to have a little bit of light in every room that we went into. And we also had some flashlights, but this helped, just to give some ambient light into the room. It really did help. And so I have several of these, and I have lots and lots of batteries. So one of the things I really have stockpiled is batteries. I've noticed I've never had a battery that did not work. Even if I've had the battery for several years, when I put it in the appliance, it works. And so I always buy Amazon batteries. And so you might give that a try if you want to make sure that, you have a little bit of light this winter if ever your power goes out. Another thing that I had purchased a while back is these little flat lights. Now, I have quite a large kitchen in there. I live in an older home, so we don't have any built-in light under the cabinets. I just don't have that. I know some kitchens do, especially newer ones have that. But even if you did and your power was out, it's not going to work. So I had bought several of these that actually have a back on them that sticks up under the cabinet. You can't even really see it. It's just up under there. And it runs on three AAA batteries. And so it's up under the countertop. And when you run your hand across it, it lights up. And when you run your hand back across it, it cuts off. And so up under my counter, I have several of these. I can just take my hand, run it across, all the way across. Oh, no, it's not gonna work. There you go, run it across, and all of these will light up. And I left them on most of the evening. And then when I got ready to go to bed, I would just go in, and cut them back off. But this really works well in all kinds of situations. You might consider even putting, it has a little self-stick back on it, and they adhere really good. And these little notches right here that are on the edges, I don't know if you can see that good because of the type of angle that I've got there. There's little notches there. You just stick it, slide it, and it pops right back into the holder. And it could go on like the side of your bathroom wall, and it would just give you light in a place where you might need it if you don't have, in a closet or something like that, where you don't automatically have electric light. You can have this running on batteries. And these really came in handy. So whatever room where you put these, you can just have a way that you can have some type of light at night, because I'm going to tell you, when you don't have street lights and you don't have any other light in your house, it gets super dark. And especially if it's like windy, rainy, and all those kind of things in addition to that, just having extra light is great. So I had that covered. What other things did I have covered? Oh yes, when we did finally find an area outside where we could get ATEX to go through, we had been surviving, and where we could get just a little bit of connection to the outside world using our phones, the internet on our phones. We needed to have a way to charge our phones. And that was, your phone goes out very quickly. Usually within the day, if you have a cell phone, it'll run out of battery power, especially if you're trying to get news and read what was going on. I mean, that was the only way we could figure out what was happening. We didn't have TV. We did have radio. I do have an emergency radio. I should have brought that in here to show you. I didn't, but I will tell you about it. I have an emergency radio. It has like an air horn on it that will sound for an emergency. It has 2 methods of lights. It has a flashlight and a solar reading lamp. It has 4 different types of radio connections, including a weather band. And I listened to that quite a few times, just listened over and over and over to the different things that it was telling us about, flood waters, what the dams were doing, how they were receding, the areas that were being cleared. All of these things are going on the weather band. I listened to that. my husband and I also listen to a few other stations just to have something to hear. Well, I think a couple times we listened to just some music and maybe the news one time. But for our phones, we used this battery bank, and it is so helpful. I bought 2 of these probably 4 or 5 years ago, and they have really come in handy for us. You take this battery bank and you charge it. It has a little charge cord. You plug it in, and it will fully charge this bank. Then you can disconnect it and put it up, on your cabinet. And then when you need your phone charged, you can connect your phone to this. You just pull this down, connect your phone right back in here. It'll take both kinds of charge for you. The has 2 ports here for the large chunky end, and it has a small one in the middle for this short end. Depending on what you need to be on this end, you can charge it on this side. And then you plug this into your phone, and it will charge an iPhone 8 times without, it just is a battery bank. It will just charge it 8 times for you before it needs to be charged back itself. And so we used this several days, and it came in handy. My husband had one and I had one. There's also emergency light on the end of this. Now, I have not charged it since the storm. You can see that it is still running along, but I need to be recharging this right now. So the bank itself will store the power. You have to plug it in, kind of like you do a generator, a solar generator. Got to plug that in. It's basically a battery bank for you. But it's great to have these when you know that a storm is coming or there's a potential for a snow or something like that. Go ahead and fully charge your battery bank, and then you have, that 8 times when your phone is out of battery power, you will be able to fully charge it off of something like this. And if I can remember, I'm going to leave you a link in the description below. You know what I think I might do? I might just set up the Homespun Wife section in my store on Amazon and just put items in it for preparedness. And that way you guys can go over there and scroll through all the items that I've purchased for preparedness, and you can look and see if there's anything there that you might like to add to your household right now that will help you get ready, because I know we're getting in, especially to those who are living in the U.S., we're getting ready to head into the winter season shortly, and and also some other things going to be going on in our world. And we just want to always be ready. I want to be ready. I don't want to be caught off guard for anything that might happen. And so a battery bank is a great way to just add something. They weren't very expensive. Let me tell you, I think I got 2 of these at the time for like $30 or something like that, $30 or $40. So really, really good deal. And when we finally got out and got to go see my mother-in-law, while I was there and we delivered water and we delivered food, she said, "I have a gift for you." And I said, "You do?" And she said, "I do." And I wanted to show you guys what my mother-in-law gave me. She gave me this beautiful pumpkin that lights up. And you can see how huge it is. It's just huge. And it has the candlelight inside of it. And in the evenings, I brought this back, and it was so, so pretty. I have enjoyed this so much this season, looking at this beautiful, I love the color of it. I love the top of it. It is just absolutely gorgeous. And so I had this sitting here in my den, and I thought, I'm going to show them this pretty pumpkin my mother-in-law gave me. And this was during the time that we, just when, Hurricane Helene had ended. So I was like, wow, this is such a gift. And every time I see this, I will remember the fact that my mother-in-law gave this to me after the hurricane. And it has a light inside of it, and it makes me, think about that time of the storm and how storms do pass. Now, when the storm passes, we often have a lot of things that we have to do to recover from it. For us, trash pickup was delayed, lots of things, but those are small compared to what a lot of people are having to deal with in the aftermath of this storm. I know that we can't prepare for everything, but one of the number one things we should always prepare for in any kind of disaster situation is our hearts. Make sure that we are spiritually in tune with the Lord, that we have prayed, and that we are fully trusting in Him, so that no matter what happens, we are ready to meet Him, because we just never know what life holds. He knows, but we don't. Being prepared is a wonderful way to not only help yourself, but your neighbors, family, and friends. And not only being prepared with just these kinds of items, but being spiritually prepared through prayer and through being fully dedicated to the Lord, trusting in Him with everything, and sharing your faith by being proactive and helping others and encouraging them through all the things that life brings our way. Friends, thank you so much for spending time with me as I've shared with you some of the ways that we prepared well for this kind of thing and some of the ways we need to improve. Let me know if you have been through big storms in the past and something that you might have had on hand that helped you. I have come to know that we can lean on one another for information to help get ourselves ready for the storms of life. I love you all and look forward to seeing you next time. Bye-bye.